This House will come back to order. House will come back to order. Clerk will ring the bell. Clerk will read the caption to a group of privilege resolutions.
Commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Inn movement, recognizing commending the 21st Annual American Society for Public Administration, commending the South Clayton Stealth Incorporated, recognizing commending Dr. Tim Brown, commending and congratulating Pearl Huff, honoring the life and memory of William Scott Zadernack for his dedication to the people of Dawson County, honoring the life and memory of Rilla Biggs Williamson, commending and congratulating Isabella Triggs, commending and congratulating Emma Toner, commending and congratulating Laura Baker, recognizing and commending Georgia school bus drivers, honoring the life and memory of Marion Holiday, recognizing and commending Mrs. Jeannie Dean Byers and Mrs. Paula Dean Doris, recognizing July 1st, 2019, it's Entrepreneurship Day in Georgia. Recognizing and celebrating the CSRA Business League Incorporated on the grand occasion of its 49th anniversary. Recognizing and commending Margaret Ayers for 75 years of service at Northeast Georgia Bank. Recognizing and commending Robert I. Gerard for his contributions to the University of Georgia football program. Congratulating the winners of the Georgia Civil War Commission Art and Essay Contest. Honoring the life and memory of Paul Joseph Watson of Rossville, Georgia. Commending Dr. Queen Blessing Itua for her work with Global Empowerment Movement. Recognizing May 15, 2019 as Peace Officers Memorial Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing June 2019 as Immigrant Heritage Month. Recognizing and honoring May 2019 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Recognizing the month of July 2019 as Fibroid Awareness Month at the State Capitol. Recognizing May 30th, 2019 as Foster Care and Adoption Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing, commending Reverend Dr. Marlon D. Scott. Recognizing, commending Stephen Isom. Commending and recognizing the City of Pooler, honoring the life and memory of civil rights activist Ms. Dorothy Bolden. Recognizing April 2019 as Genocide Prevention and Awareness Month at the State Capitol, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Chair recognizes Representative Morris for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move that the House agree with the Senate substitute for House Bill 118.
Representative Morris has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 118. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 118 by Representative Morris, the 26th Cantrell of the 22nd Hitchens, and 161st to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 10 of Title 16, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to obstruction of public administration and related offenses, so as to revise the offense of transmitting a false alarm.
Chair recognizes Representative Morris to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 118.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I ask for your support for House Bill 118. there are minor changes in language here. The one change that you will see is a structuring of the bill, which simply takes the item that was listed previously on line 39 and moves it to line 53. And this is it states the use of electronics devices or software that alter, conceal, or disguise or attempt to alter a person's voice. Remember, House Bill 118 is designed to raise the penalties that are associated with people that are putting in a false claim for emergency services. This is good for our civilians. This is geared towards individuals that are making a false claim for emergency services. Our officers show up, they're prepared, but what typically happens is it's the civilian that gets hurt. Mr. Speaker, I yield for questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 118, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 143, the nays are 12, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 118. Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think SB 72 has finally made its way back to us, and I move that the House adhere on its position to SB 72 and appoint a conference committee.
Chairman Rhodes has moved that the House adhere on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute, Senate Bill 72, and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 72 by Senator Harper, the 7th, Mullis, the 53rd, Gooch, the 51st, Jones, the 25th. Be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 27, the official code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions relative to game and fish, so as to remove a prohibition on hunting on wildlife management areas.
On the gentleman's motion, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and this House has adhered. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Rhodes of the 120th, Representative Burns of the 159th, and Representative Kelly of the 16th. Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 166.
Chairman Silcox has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 166. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 166 by Representative Silcox, the 52nd, and others, be titled an act to amend Chapter 34, Title 43, the official code of Georgia, annotated relating to physicians, assistants, and others, so as to provide for the licensure of genetic counselors.
Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As y'all may recall, House Bill 166 was created for the licensure of genetic counseling. This minor change is really just to the very last lines of the bill, and it's just clarifying that someone using genetic data for purposes of nutritional counseling as a dietitian will be exempt of from the provisions of the bill. If I have any questions, I'd be glad to yield.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate your favorable consideration.
On the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute, House Bill 166, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the lady's motion. The ayes are 143, the nays are 22. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 166. Chair recognizes Chairman Welch for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 228.
Chairman Welch, Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill passed out with a vote in the Senate of 51-0. The only changes made to the bill are at lines 263 through 266. That language previously was formed in the negative. We made that in the affirmative to require that the courts be willing to consider the parental wishes and as well as the pregnancy and what would be an emancipation for a marriage. Those are the only changes, and I ask for your favorable consideration of this bill. I'll yield for questions.
Chairman Welch has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 228. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 228 by Representative Welch of the 110th, Ballinger of the 23rd, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3, Title 19 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to marriage generally, so as change the minimum age of marriage of a child from 16 to 17 years of age.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 228.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this legislation passed the Senate 51-0. The only changes are at line 263 through 266. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to yield.
You yield for questions?
I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Petrie to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do, thank you.
My friend, is it not true that some of the concerns I have been addressed in this amendment that was made in the Senate? And can you just explain that briefly? Thank you.
Yes, sir, I will be happy to. At lines 263 through 267, the language was in a negative format when it came to considering the parental concerns or the pregnancy of the child. We changed that in the Senate to be an affirmative consideration by the court during an emancipation process to then consider the parents' concerns as well as whether or not there was a pregnancy in the proposed marriage. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon to your left for a question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you yield?
I do, yes, Representative.
Thank you for working on this issue. Can you further explain how this affects the pregnancy of a person who is either seeking marriage or not?
It does not affect the pregnancy. During the emancipation process, the court is and will consider whether or not the couple that is seeking emancipation from marriage, whether or not there is a child pregnancy involved. But otherwise, it doesn't affect the pregnancy at all.
Do you further yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler to your right for a question.
To my friend Lowell, so under the emancipation process contemplated by the bill, if there was somebody that was still 16 years old that sought to go through the emancipation process and be allowed to marry because of parental support and potentially a child, there would be a mechanism for that to still happen then?
At age 17, the bill changes that from 16 and moves it to 17. 17, the child may seek emancipation from marriage at that point in time.
but there'd be no mechanism at age 16 and a half to do that.
No mechanism at 16 and a half.
Thanks.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I ask for your favorable consideration of the Senate substitute to House Bill 228, and I'll yield the will.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 228, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 155, the nays are 14, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 228. Chair recognizes Chairman Knight for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 233.
Chairman Knight has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 233. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 233 by Representative Knight of the 130th and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 4 Title 26 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to pharmacies, so as to enact the Pharmacy Anti-Steering and Transparency Act.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to all, if you remember, we had two very important pieces of legislation this year that left the House. This is one of them in regards to PBMs and trying to make sure that we're getting down our cost of medicine and pharmaceuticals to our plans. HB 233, as you know, is a patient-focused bill to help preserve patient choice and to restrict pharmacies owned by pharmacy benefit managers and insurers from engaging in steering or sharing with their affiliated or for commercial purposes. We continue to negotiate in good faith as we left here, as we had done all along with both of these bills. We tightened the definition of referral. There was an elimination of limited distribution drugs, which are drugs not commonly carried by retail pharmacies or oncology clinics. And then there was some concern on the Senate side in which the PBMs brought up about a fiscal issue. They never really gave any reason, but we did that anyway. And I think that'll give us time to go back this year and start to look and see if there is any fiscal issues that, quite frankly, I think it's the other way around. But again, we ought to be proud of this legislation. This will be I think probably a national model for other states to follow in regards to dealing with PBMs. So I'd appreciate your support for the House, to agree to the Senate sub to House Bill 233. Thank you.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 233, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 165, the nays are 1, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 233. Chair recognizes Chairman Harrell for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 276.
Chairman Harrell has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 276. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 276 by Representative Harrell of the 106th, Kelly the 16th, and others be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 the official code of Georgia annotated relating state sales and use tax so as to modify the definition of dealer.
Chair recognizes Chairman Harrell to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the Marketplace Facilitator Bill that passed the House with 158 plus positive votes, went to Senate Finance, and there were a couple of positive improvements made to the measure. There was some discussion about additional language that the Georgia Department of Revenue had concerns about, but it was not added in Senate Finance, and the measure continued on and pretty much intact and is a good piece of legislation. In the Senate Rules Committee, the bill was amended and lines 91 through 114 were added that have the Department of Revenue has a number of questions about dealing with the audit ability of these sellers and retailers, dealing with who is responsible for the collection and remittance of sales tax. And also in this bill was added the carve-out for rideshare. That measure, as you heard earlier today, was added back into Senate Bill 200, the transportation bill. So it's our desire to disagree with those modifications, get Department of Revenue to further review and clarify those audit provisions and responsibility provisions, and hopefully come to an agreement with the Senate on this measure. Today, just by coincidence, the Wall Street Journal just published an article for the first time in the history of the United States, online retail sales have exceeded brick and mortar sales in our nation. So this is a very important measure. The fiscal impact of this measure is included in our current and future budget planning, revenue projections for the state. So I'd ask you to vote to disagree, and so that we can continue those discussions with our friends across the hall and hopefully get into conference and reach a compromise on this measure.
On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 276, is there any objection? Is there any objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 276. Chair recognizes Chairman F. Stration for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House adopt the conference committee report for Senate Bill 110.
Chairman F. Stration moves that the House adopt the Committee of Conference report on Senate Bill 110. The clerk will read the conference committee report.
House E41 2052S. Committee of Conference on Senate Bill 110 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives recede from their positions and that the attached committees of conference substitute to Senate Bill 110 be adopted. For the Senate, Stone of the 23rd, Kennedy of the 18th, Dugan of the 30th. For the House, of Stration of the 104th, Fleming of the 121st, and Oliver of the 82nd.
Chair recognizes Chairman F. Stration to explain the Committee of Conference report on Senate Bill 110.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee conference report on Senate Bill 110 is a great compromise that was worked out with the state Senate with respect to the statewide business court. So as you go through the bill, you'll see a few differences that we had originally. The court would be called the Georgia Statewide Business Court. The filing fee amount that we had passed was $5,000. That in this bill has been reduced to $3,000. Additionally, as part of the bill, the judge of the court can sit in Atlanta or in Macon-Bibb County, but would go to the county of venue of any case that is being heard by the court. So ultimate trial would be in the county courthouse where venue is proper. So nothing's being changed with that respect. The right to jury trial remains. That's not changed whatsoever in this bill. The conference committee report also includes some additional exceptions to make sure that the business court isn't brought into cases that would otherwise, where it otherwise shouldn't be. And part of that also is language that was included in the House, which was adopted by the Senate, which says that the judge of the business court can say when cases aren't appropriate to be there. So as you're aware, we've modeled this on local jurisdiction business courts, and that was a real crucial element of what had been passed and what had been considered. The bill also includes some language that was requested by the clerks of court that passed out of both the House and the Senate committees, and that's with respect to the attorneys giving notice if they're removing their email from accepting service. And finally, the language includes a permissive provision for filings on behalf of the Attorney General's office so that filing fees in those cases aren't necessary. The deposition language that was part of Representative Silcock's bill is also in here. That is that local circuits would pay for depositions on behalf of prosecuting attorneys, not the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, which passed this body unanimously, I believe. The committee conference report was thoroughly vetted by both the House and Senate members. I want to thank Representative Oliver, Chairman Fleming for their service on behalf of the House, and we're very proud of the report that we have here for you today, establishing a statewide business court in Georgia, something that we've seen in north of 20 other states that has provided great economic development for their states. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Shannon to your right for a question.
Does the representative yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. I remember in the original legislation it said that if any party that was a part of the case did not want their case heard in the business court, they would be able to say, I don't want this heard in the business court. Is that still a part of it? Because I heard you mention that judges could say it doesn't belong. But could any other party also say they don't want it heard in business court?
So the bill that was passed in this House twice already, that was the House bill and the Senate bill with the House language, provided for transfer to go to the business court upon motion of a party. That could then be heard and contested by the other side. This was discussed in conference, and what we resolved to do here is there is a presumption that the bills stay in the state court under those circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well on the adoption of the conference committee report on Senate Bill 110. All those in favor of the adoption of the conference committee report will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the adoption of the conference committee report on Senate Bill 110, the ayes are 135, the nays are 28, and the conference committee report has been adopted. We're going now to the new rules calendar. Going to the new rules calendar, the clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 48.
House Resolution 48 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd and others. A resolution supporting Georgia's coastal tourism and fisheries and opposing seismic testing and oil and gas drilling activities off the Georgia coast. This resolution having been signed to Natural Resources and Environment, that committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by Rules Committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gilliard to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my brothers and sisters in the House of Representatives, today I bring to you a simple urge resolution. It is House Resolution 48. It is a resolution that simply states that we are against offshore drilling. The unanimous United Delegation for the Coast has stood. It is an effort that we have also seen on both sides. There are probably 1.1 1 billion jobs, over thousands and thousands of opportunities to benefit our fisheries and tourism, 200 municipalities that have signed off on not wanting to have offshore drilling. It's a simple urge resolution. We ask for your consideration, your favorable consideration on this resolution. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Dreyer to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
So I got this on my desk, and I think I appreciate it. There's just a lot coming at us. Representative, this bill would create a study committee to protect Georgia's coast from threats. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, will you please
It's
explain
a
it then?
simple urge resolution. Of course, it's not a bill in that respect. It's an urge resolution. We're just standing united for Georgia's coast, urging that there are no efforts of seismic testing or offshore drilling.
Okay, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Barr to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
In committee, it was testified that the state waters are 3 miles. Is that not true?
3 miles, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Mr. Speaker, I know that we have a long day ahead of us. I just ask for everyone's favorable consideration on this urge resolution for House Resolution 48. I yield the well.
We have another member that wishes to be heard. You know I've got to ask you. Is there anything in this resolution that we've missed about cityhood on the coast? Chair recognizes Representative Hogan to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this will help ward off St. Simons as a city by adopting this resolution. I speak in favor of the resolution. More than 200 towns and cities along the Atlantic coast have passed official resolutions against Atlantic offshore drilling and testing, including Savannah, Tybee, Brunswick, St. Simons, Kingsland, Hinesville, Portdale, Richmond Hill, Thunderbolt, and Midway, as well as the city of Atlanta. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House.
We've got a couple of questions here. Do you care to yield?
Yes, sir.
You do yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
I thought we were good friends.
You haven't heard his question yet.
Boy, you better hold that assessment till I finish. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I yield.
Is it not true? Are you prepared to assure the Speaker that the rumor of the city of Little St. Simon is not true?
Not with me.
Thank you, and thank Representative Gillen for this bill, and we do stand united on the coast in support.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon to your left for a question.
Thank you. Do you yield?
Yes.
Just a clarifying question. Who are we urging this resolution towards?
Toward
Correct.
this House.
Okay. Thank you. Do you further yield?
Yes.
And would it not be true that this is a quite benign piece of legislation as other states are passing penalties and restrictions and liabilities, yet this body is just doing something pretty simple?
It is quite simple, and it has been passed all up and down the United States eastern coast.
You have no further questions.
I yield the well, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Stover rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that Republicans ran on drill, baby drill?
I think we're asking that that not apply off the Georgia coast. Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of the resolution. The ayes are 125, the nays are 36. The resolution has been adopted and this House has urged. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 200.
Senate Bill 200 by Senator Gooch, the 51st speech of the 21st, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 4, Chapter 2, Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the exercise of power to contract by the Georgia Department of Transportation so as to require the department to develop a procedure for appealing the rejection of a contract. This bill having referred to the Committee on Transportation, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by Rules Committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the House Transportation Chair, Chairman Tanner, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come before you a little after 2:30 today in an effort to continue a conversation that we've had in this well and in this House several times. And most of you have stood with me at least twice before on most of the measures you're going to see before you today in Senate Bill 200. I know that several of you have some concerns specifically around the language around the jet fuel exemption and the amount collected that would be used for local airports. Again, most of you have supported me twice before on this. We still haven't made it to conference committee. We still haven't made it to have that conversation yet with the Senate. So I'm asking you to consider supporting me again on that measure, again, to get to conference. What you have before you today and the underlying bill in Senate Bill 200 is very simple. Senate Bill 200 in its original form just allows for a person who does a bid at GDOT, and if that is a low bid and that bid is rejected for some reason, they have the opportunity to have an appeal process to be able to say, I'm low bid, I've been rejected, maybe a technical reason, doesn't require that they go with that bid, but they at least have an avenue to be heard on that. So that's the underlying premise of Senate Bill 200. In addition to that, it has what's passed out of this House as House Bill 511, which is one of this House's priorities for the year, which was to address barriers to transportation and mobility in rural Georgia. We talk a lot as a body about rural Georgia. Those of us who live in rural Georgia understand that we have specific barriers that need to be addressed by this General Assembly. This is an opportunity to start that process with transportation. The House Transit and Governance and Funding Commission has worked 2 years in a very bipartisan way with members of this body and with members of the general public who have expertise in this area, and have brought forward a very solid recommendation that you have supported overwhelmingly in this House before, to show both the Senate and the public that we're willing to listen and we're willing to compromise. One of the concerns that's been raised has been around CERTA and the fact that we were administratively moving the attachment of CERTA away from GDOT, placing it over in the other department. Hearing those concerns, we have in this bill before you today left the administrative attachment of CERTA at GDOT. We still are allowing for the employees, because currently the ATL, Greta, CERTA all share employees, they share office spaces, all that would be allowed to continue, but the administrative attachment stays at GDOT. There's no ability for CERTA to move funds over into the Department of Mobility. So that's a huge concern that's been raised, that's been addressed in Senate Bill 200. In addition to that, when this bill originally passed the House Transportation Committee, it had a 50-cent ride-share fee attached to it for the ride-share companies. One of the things that came up during our commission work over the last 2 years was we've heard testimony from our ride-share companies. Now that includes Uber, Lyft, and the taxis and limos. In those conversations, they want to all be on an equal playing field. So they have all supported the 50-cent fee that you have in this legislation before you today. Now let me make sure this is clear. That is not on top of any sales tax. That replaces sales tax. So we're not double dipping from these companies, and that's why there's supposed to be some letters. I'm not sure if they've arrived on your desk yet or not. Uber, Lyft, taxis, limos, all of their associations support the bill that's in front of you today with the current language that's in there. In addition, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it has the exact legislation that this House already passed, and I believe House Bill 447 before crossover day, relating to the jet fuel exemption. Again, I understand and I agree that we have concerns about the rate we're putting in for our local airports. I believe, and I've talked to some members who've had some conversations directly with the governor's office and others, and I believe they're committed to continuing those conversations. The issue is we've got to get to the point of being able to continue those conversations and get to conference. So that, Mr. Speaker, that is what the bill does. We have saw all of this before more than one time, so I think most members understand it. If there's any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer it, but I would ask again for favorable consideration. Let us continue the conversation in conference.
Do you yield for questions?
I will.
Chair recognizes Chairman Houston to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true that I have just talked with representatives of the governor's office, and they have assured me that they would help negotiate in good faith to help the airports in rural Georgia? And I'm putting my trust once more in that they will do what's best for rural Georgia.
Yes, ma'am. I believe you talked with them, and they gave you the same response they've given me, that they're willing to be at the table and work hard to bring that number where it needs to be. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Does this legislation mean that if my dear friend from Liberty County wants to rent one of my funeral home limousines to go out for dancing on the night, I have to charge him taxes to rent one of my funeral home limousines? Is that what I'm understanding?
Under current law, if you have a limo, you're supposed to be paying tax now, but I'm not sure. I can't give you legal advice, so I'm not going to attempt to do that, but I would just say keep it under the table. Keep it under the table.
No more questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But, Mr. Speaker, let me also say, based on Representative Bentley's question, I want to also make mention that I know there's been some conversations around MARTA and Gwinnett County. There's nothing in this legislation relating to that affects Gwinnett County and any of their local ability at all.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to your right for a question.
Mr. Gentleman yield.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is a bill that we both have worked on different provisions of, and I want to thank you for working on it. Isn't it true that under this proposal, there's, per the fiscal note, about a $47 million exemption for jet fuel? That's the 4 pennies.
I don't know the exact number, but I trust the gentleman knows what he speaks on the number.
Furthermore, if the gentleman will yield, isn't it furthermore true that in the special session, we, this General Assembly, also did an exemption on the local taxes for jet fuel, an exemption, and that amount was a hard amount of about $25 million that we've already exempted?
We did take action in the special session around jet fuels. Yes, sir.
So we're continuing to be that business-friendly state. And I guess I want to make sure that in front of this body, and again, isn't it true that you and I have talked that there are important provisions in this bill, but I've got your assurance that if we don't get adequate funding, I mean, that's what we're striving also for as part of this bill going forward. Is that true?
Yes, sir. We have to somehow strike a balance between being a business-friendly state and making sure we're competitive. Governor Deal did a great job during his 8 years in office, putting us in a #1 seat in the country. Governor Kemp is leading on that effort also now in his first year in office, and I know this House is committed to that. And at the same time, we have to be committed to making sure we take care of our rural airports. I have a rural airport in my community, making sure they're taken care of as well, and finding what that balance is. Chairman Houston said it right in talking with the governor's office. They've told me they're committed to being at the table and striking that balance. And this session's been frustrating because I've just been trying to get to the table.
Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen. One further question, though. Isn't it true it's not just only our rural airports, but it's also these regional commercial airports such as Savannah, Valdosta, Albany, Columbus, Macon, that also have commercial flights from these airlines, such as one of the state's biggest employers. The flights coming in there as far as feeder flights or short flights. Furthermore, isn't it true that it's not just about our rural airports, but there are some major airports such as like PDK, Charlie Brown, other airports are what the FAA calls reliever airports. And those reliever airports are specifically to cut down on congestion at Hartsfield. Otherwise, those private jets and all would be taking up landing and takeoff times that otherwise we've seen Hartsfield's numbers continue to grow in the commercial carriers taking off and landing in Hartsfield. So if the congestion increased at Hartsfield, that therefore would hurt our commercial airlines. Is that not true?
Yes, all of the airports are important to our state and to being #1 to do business. Yes, sir.
So, gentlemen, I appreciate your commitment to make sure that all provisions of this bill continue to get negotiated in good faith. I think I've got your word on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, with that, I'm going to yield the well and encourage everyone to support Senate Bill 200 and again to continue this conversation. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 200 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Chairman Belton rise?
Yes, sir. Pursuant to the Chocus rule, I'd like to recuse myself from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the record will so reflect. What purpose does Representative Lopez Romero rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that despite having some concerns over this session with the Delta fuel tax exemption, I am appreciative of the work that has been done for transit generally throughout our state, and therefore I'll be voting favorably for this bill.
The lady so states. What purpose does Representative Derrick Jackson rise?
Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true when I read lines 490 through 644 that this bill and other bills similar creates our small government to become a big government with the creation of more departments?
Well, I think that would leave, that's a question better left to the judgment of each and every individual member. Those in favor of the bill are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 200. The ayes are 147. The nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 171.
Senate Bill 171 by Senator Wilkinson the 50th, Huffstetler the 52nd, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 15, Chapter 2 of Title 21 and Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to courts, primaries, and elections generally.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 171, many of you have heard, this is the COAG raise bill. We've been working on this all the way up until, I think, over the weekend, trying to make sure that we were making sure that we had listened and took into account some of the concerns that were being expressed across the counties. So with that, what I want to do is make sure that you understand what this bill does. This bill simply takes all of the COLAs over the years, it wraps them up, rolls them up, so that they're already getting that, and it rolls it up, and then it simply adds a 5% raise to the base. That's it. If you've heard other things, please don't. There's a lot of confusing conversation that's going on out there, and it's confusing the issue. Currently, our constitutional officers already get a COLA. It's already wrapped up. It's there. So what we're doing is we're upping the base. If you see in these bills in each part, we're moving the census from 2000 to 2010. And then you've got on page 2, that's the clerks section where they're rolling up the COLA and adding 5% to the base. You've got the probate, and again, rolling up the COLA and adding the 5% to the base. We've got the clerks and the sheriffs. One of the other things that we've done in trying to listen to our members and also the counties, several of them may be and complain about cost. We've moved this to the effective date of 21. So that's going to give our counties time to respond as far as budgetary. But the main thing I want to talk to y'all about is you're hearing some big numbers, but the fact is, if you look at the tiers and what you're really looking at on a per county basis, is not much money. On a county like mine, from 50,000 to 74,000, it's a total for all 4 constitutional officers of $15,058. That's it. Okay? That's all of them. On a per county basis, that's it. As you go up the tiers, the tiers of 500 and plus, those aren't even controlled. Well, it's controlled by the legislature, but their local legislative delegations come in with local law, local bill, and they're based on that. So they're making more than what this is, and those are the 4 largest counties. They will not be affected by this. So again, I want you to really think about this. This is a simple 5% raise. These constitutional officers have not had a raise to their base salary in 13 years. 13 years. And they are constitutional officers, and it is the General Assembly by law that sets those salaries. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for any questions. If not, I'll ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 171.
You have a question if you yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Holly to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that throughout our state, our courts, specifically our local courts, are overwhelmingly loaded up with cases, and therefore it's probably in a good mindset for the state to be able to provide them with an added incentive to work, especially with the expenses laid upon them?
If the gentleman so states.
Thank you, sir. And further yield?
Yes.
It's not true that if we can certainly use our state courts to provide them with a 5% raise, then might that also, maybe in future legislation, help for us to possibly raise our minimum wage in the state for up above from our 25-year low of $5.15 and maybe the current $2.15 for wait staff?
Well, the gentleman, as far as I know, you're speaking on a different issue, on a topic of minimum wage, but we're specifically on this bill talking about our constitutional officers. And I'll go back to what you said. It's so very important, like with the clerks. Our court systems don't work without our clerks. And they're performing more and more duties, and if they mess up, guess what? The whole system falls. So this is an amount just to get those up, raised for the last 13 years that we haven't given them, and it gets their base up for 5%, and that's over 13 years. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'll ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 171, and I know that our constitutional officers, our probate judges, our Superior Court clerks, tax commissioners, and our sheriffs of our county would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 171 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 171. The ayes are 132. The nays are 27. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 190.
Senate Bill 190 by Senator Kennedy, the 18th, Ligon of the 3rd, Cows of the 46th, Alberts of the 56th, to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 9 of Title 19 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Child Custody Interstate Jurisdiction Act, so as to provide that a party may bring a counterclaim for contempt. This bill having referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the Juvenile Justice Committee, Chairman Ballinger, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 190 is a very simple bill. It updates the legal definition of legal custody and physical custody, and it also allows for a counterclaim on a petition to modify. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I urge your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 190 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 190. The ayes are 159, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute of HB 242 as found in Folder 3.
Chairman Hawkins has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute, House Bill 242. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 242 by Representative Hawkins, the 27th, Mathiak, the 73rd, Bennett, the 94th. Be entitled an act to amend Title 43, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to professions and businesses so as to provide for the regulation of massage therapy educational programs.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins to explain the Senate substitute.
I don't think. Buttons on. Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate did make a few changes to this bill, mainly in professional liability, the area of that some wording, and another area about municipalities. Pretty much they just rubbed on it and it feels better now. So without any questions, I'll yield the well.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute, House Bill 242, all those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 144, the nays are 12. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 242. Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute as amended by the House to House Bill 424.
Chairman Silcox has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 424 as amended by the House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 424 by Representative Silcox of the 52nd, Cooper the 43rd, Kelly the 16th, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 1615.3 of the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to definitions regarding street gang terrorism and prevention.
Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox to explain the Senate substitute.
On your desk, you have an amendment to my Senate substitute. And this amendment is really, Chairman Reeves asked me to add this on. This is part of his House Bill 158 that we passed already. It really is just to clear up the sentencing in the sex trafficking section of Title 16. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions?
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 424 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the lady's motion, the ayes are 161, the nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Fleming rise?
Make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 708 be moved from the Natural Resources and Environment Committee to the Judiciary Committee. Both chairmen of both committees concur.
Chairman Fleming has moved that House Bill 708 be withdrawn from the Natural Resources and Environment Committee and recommitted to the Judiciary Committee. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 708 by Representative Fleming of the 121st, Rose of the 120th, and McCall of the 33rd. Bill being entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 5 of Title 12, Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to control of water pollution and surface water use.
On the motion of the chairman that House Bill 708 be withdrawn from the Natural Resources and Environment Committee and recommitted to the Judiciary Committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. What purpose does Representative Carpenter rise?
Speaker, I move that the rules be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
Representative Carpenter has moved that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Jones, the 25th, Welch, the 110th, and others, be titled an Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 7, Title 48, the official code of Georgia annotated relating the imposition rate computation exemptions from state income tax, so as to provide for a state income tax credit.
On the representative's motion that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Ways and Means. What purpose does Representative Saines rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that the rules be temporarily suspended so that a bill may be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
Representative Saines has moved that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Saines, the 180th, and others, be titled an Act to amend Chapter 23 of Title 47 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating the Georgia Judicial Retirement System.
On the representative's motion that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Retirement. Chair recognizes Chairman Houston for a motion.
I move that the House disagree with the Senate substitute to House Bill 85.
Chairman Houston has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 85. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 85 by Representative Houston of the 170th, Newton of the 123rd, Corbett of the 174th, be titled an Act to amend Code Section 4883, the official code of Georgia annotated relating the exemptions from sales and use tax, so as to exempt sales to organ procurement organization sales and use taxes.
On the lady's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 85, is there objection? Is there any objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 85.
Thank you.
What purpose does Chairman Welch rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
Move that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended so that a bill can be read and signed to a committee for the first time.
Chairman Welch has moved that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Welch of the 110th and others to be titled an Act to amend Title 10 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to commerce and trade so as to create the Journalism Ethics Board.
Chairman Welch has moved that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Judiciary. Chair recognizes Representative Carson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move this House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 277.
Representative Carson has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 277. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 277 by Representative Carson, the 46th, Smith, and 134th, Williamson, and 115th, Be titled an act to amend Title 33, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance so as to allow goodwill from insurer acquisitions to be treated as an asset.
Chair recognizes Representative Carson to explain the Senate substitute.
Folks, House Bill 277, this bill clarifies accounting treatment for Georgia domiciled insurance companies. It passed this House last month by a unanimous vote, 162 to nothing. The Senate substitute, after we sent it over, we noticed it included a duplicative provision on Department of Insurance consent for shareholder dividends. So we corrected this in Senate committee. Senate passed this unanimously as well. I'm asking the House for its favorable consideration. And this is in folder number 3, by the way.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 277, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 161, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 279.
Chairman Lumsden has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 279. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 279 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th, Fleming of the 121st, Hitchens of the 161st. Being entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state administrative organization so to provide that law enforcement officers appointed by the State Revenue Commissioner as special agents or enforcement officers of the Department of Revenue may use department motor vehicles.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden to explain his motion.
The only change that is made here is to correct a Scrivener's error in line 41. It was erroneously listed as 50-21-20, should have been 50-21-2. The Senate just simply restated that as Article 2, Chapter 21 of Title 50. That is the only change. Appreciate your favorable consideration.
On the gentleman's motion, what purpose does Representative Walensky rise? He waves. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 279, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 151, the nays are 11. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 279. Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for a motion.
I move this House disagree to the Senate substitute to Senate Bill 68.
Chairman Tanner has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to Senate Bill 68. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 68 by Senator Sims, the 12th, Wilkinson, the 50th, parent of the 42nd. Be titled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to education so as to strengthen provisions relating to financial management of local school systems.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate made some changes around the legislation around the turnaround program that this House added to Senate Bill 68. We've been working very closely with the governor's office on that legislation, and we would just ask that we disagree and try to continue to work on that legislation.
On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to Senate Bill 68, is there any objection? Is there any objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 68. Chair recognizes Chairman Welch for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 311.
Chairman Welch has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 311. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 311 by Representative Welch, the 110th file of the 171st Abstration of the 104th, being titled an act to amend Chapter 21 of Title 50, Title 36, Part 1 of Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 23, and Code Section 5634 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to waiver of sovereign immunity.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, we voted out the waiver of sovereign immunity legislation earlier this session. The Senate has sent over a substitute which makes several amendments, and I'll go through those with you, but the Senate voted this substitute out 49-0. The changes are going to be seen at lines 52, where we clarified that the waiver of state sovereign immunity will be as to state statute as opposed to state law in general. Also at lines 84 and 102, we clarified the individual immunity provision. At lines 73 and 190, we added prosecutorial immunity. And at line 284, we made the legislation clearly prospective in its application. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll take any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the will. Ask for your favorable consideration.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 311. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 166, the nays are 0, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 311. Chair recognizes Representative Newton for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 315 in Folder 1.
Chairman Newton has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 315. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 315 by Chairman Newton of the 123rd, Reinders of the 152nd, Burns of the 159th. Being entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 80, Title 36, the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions applicable to county governments and municipal corporations and other governmental entities.
Chair recognizes Representative Newton to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This House approved unanimously HB 315, which was a transparency bill dealing with consultants who assist municipalities in establishing bids and RFPs. It just required that those consultants disclose any financial relationships with any of the bidders. The Senate made a minor change to make sure that rules that already applied to development authorities requiring certain disclosures that they have to do above $200 were not exempted or changed in any way by this. So there was no significant change in the bill as passed by the House. So I appreciate your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 315, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 315, the ayes are 167, the nays are 0, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 315. Chair recognizes Representative McLean for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to Senate Sub HB 339.
Representative McLean has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 339. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 339 by Representative McLean of the 100th, Bentley of the 139th, Smyrie of the 135th. Me title an act to amend Code Section 4286 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to special license plates, promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the, Chair recognizes Representative McLean to explain his motion. I just assumed that everybody would want to vote for you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope they do, because this bill left here at 170 to 1, and I want you all to realize that it was only 1A when we left this house, but when we went to the other house, it became 4 A's, and that's what they added: the aquarium tag, the autism tag, and the AKA tag. So all I want you all to realize is that it is, instead of being 1A, it is 4 A's. And Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to take any questions.
You have a question if you yield.
I do yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do, for my friend in the back.
Yes, sir. Does this bill have anything to do with the funeral home caucus or industry in any kind of way?
I can only say that if you're one of those A's and you see one of those tags, you'll get some of those funds.
Is that a yes or no that this will impact the funeral home industry?
I am a community servant, so I think it'll be a no.
So that means I shouldn't vote for your bill because it doesn't impact the funeral industry?
You didn't say it that way. You said that you said would it impact? And what I'm saying to you is know that it won't help you get any more additional funds or any more bodies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, gentlemen.
You might have lost her on that last one.
Well, yes, it will help you.
Do you further yield?
For one more, Mr. Speaker, since I didn't get any message, I didn't get any questions earlier when I brought this bill. We only had one A.
Chair recognizes Representative Derek Jackson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do, to my colleague from another A.
That's right. Hopefully you're open to adding one more A, and that's Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
There will be a handful.
That would be a handful.
Because right now I have 4 A's, so I would have 5 A's. But I don't think that we can add any today, but I do appreciate the question.
It's a good bill. Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, I do yield well because if I don't want, and I do ask for everybody's favorable consideration on this. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute House Bill 339, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 161, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute. We had a member who had signed up timely for a morning order this morning and then had business elsewhere he had to be at, so the chair is going to recognize Chairman Welch at this time for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Powell and Mary Mark Oliver, I think Pat Gardner would join me. Chairman Fleming might be coming as well. We wanted to recognize a very special individual in the municipal world. Susan Moore will be retiring from the Georgia Municipal Association. She came on with GMA in 1994. She served until and became general counsel in 2000 and has served dutifully all of the member cities and all of us who are legislators and city lawyers across this state. She and her staff, Mr. Patel sitting next to her, have been a wealth of knowledge and information and good pragmatic legal advice. And we owe her, and the entire municipal community owes her, a debt of gratitude for her honesty, clarity, and diligent work and thoughtfulness in performing her duties as General Counsel to the Georgia Municipal Association. We are grateful to you, and we have a resolution to recognize you. Would you please stand so we can clap? Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman England for a morning order. He's joined by Chairman Allen Powell, the Majority Leader, Leader Burns, and Chairman Trey Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that a couple of those that you have mentioned are working on conference committees and other things right in this second, but you know, we serve with some really incredible people here in this house, and one to my right was recognized by his home folks Friday night with the Silver Plow Award for 25 years of service to Elbert County, his home, and we just wanted to recognize him with a resolution here today for his humbleness and his service and his just downright humble character and lovingness of everyone, not only here in this building, but those across the state, and especially those back home in Elbert County. Mr. Chairman, we love you and we appreciate you.
Chair recognizes Representative Carpenter for a motion.
I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 353.
Chairman or Representative, I promoted you there. No, settle down. Settle down. Sometimes things take a long time before the prophecy is fulfilled. Representative Carpenter has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 353. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 353 by Representative Carpenter, the 4th, Morris, the 26th, Cantrell of the 22nd, be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 33, the official code of Georgia annotated relating the general provisions regarding insurance so as to create the crime of staging a motor vehicle collision.
Chair recognizes Representative Carpenter to explain the Senate substitute.
All right, guys, this should be in your folder too. And basically what they did over in the Senate was there were some issues on the House side about how bad the aggravated staging felony punishment was. So we actually worked with prosecutors over there, and we moved it to 2 to 10. And we also made it a serious injury. So hopefully that should make this bill agreeable. We also had a speaker from U-Haul out in Arizona that came and spoke about how bad this is happening in the state of Georgia. Currently, for the company of U-Haul, there was 136 incidents of this in 2018 in the state of Georgia, which ranks us second in the nation at 9.8% of all U-Haul's incidents. I would appreciate your favorable consideration, and I'll yield for questions.
Chair recognizes the Minority Leader, Leader Trammell, to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
For you, absolutely.
Isn't it true that I appreciate the measures that you took to make this bill a little less punitive in regards to the sentencing?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Will the gentleman further yield?
Absolutely.
Isn't it also true that I think we have more than enough laws on the books as we already have?
I think that to be true as well, but I also think that the rising cost of insurance for all your constituents and all your small businesses in the state of Georgia, this is an important piece to deter this crime.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon to your left for a question.
Thank you. Do you yield?
Absolutely.
Can you point us to the lines of the changes for the 2 to 10 years?
Yeah, that'd be line 20 and 21. So it says aggravated staging of a collision shall constitute a felony punishable by no less than 2 years and no more than 10 years.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
And actually, line 19 is where it says serious personal injury. I do.
Thank you. And so just to clarify, this is going into the insurance code and creating new felonies.
Well, currently, if it was prosecuted under insurance fraud, which it could be done, it would be 2 to 10 regardless. So this law actually gives you a 1 to 5 option.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 353, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 107, the nays are 55, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 353. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd move this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 382. That will be found in your folder too.
Majority Leader has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 382. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 382 by Representative Burns, the 159th, Watson, the 172nd, Smith, the 70th, and others. Be titled an act to amend Chapter 6A, Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia, Annotated, relating to outdoor stewardship, so as to redefine eligible applicants for and recipients of the grants.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, we hope, the final piece of completing the work on the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act. This body passed last year, and we've come back this year and made a couple of tweaks. I think we had the bill perfected when it left this body a few weeks ago, but of course the Senate wanted to make a couple of tweaks into who the folks are that can receive these local grants so we can put this money to work and do these great projects in our local communities. That's all this substitute does, and I would ask for your favorable consideration on HB 382, the Senate substitute. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I'll try my best or I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
I yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 382, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 165, the nays are 1, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 382. Chair recognizes Representative Wiedauer for a motion.
I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 392.
Representative Wiedauer has